There is a world happening around you right now that you cannot see. Not because it is hidden, not because it is secret, not because you lack the intelligence to perceive it, but because you were never given the language to describe it. And what you cannot name, you cannot see. And what you cannot see, you cannot change. There is a moment when someone uses a word you have never heard before in a financial context, and instead of asking what it means, you nod, you smile, you move on, because admitting you don't know feels worse than not knowing. That moment, repeated hundreds of times over the course of a lifetime, is the invisible wall between where you are and where you want to be. Not lack of opportunity, not lack of intelligence, not lack of effort, a missing vocabulary. In the last step, we talked about the psychology of working for money, the fear and greed that run on autopilot, the identity that pulls behavior back to familiar patterns. Today, we go one level deeper, into the tool that makes all of it possible or impossible, depending on whether you have it. The language of money. And why you cannot build wealth in a language that has no word for asset. Let's begin. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. This is not a theological statement, it is a psychological one. What you speak, you become. What you name, you can see. What has no name in your vocabulary does not exist in your reality. Think about the last time you learned a new word, really learned it, not memorized it for a test and forgot it the next day, but learned it so deeply that you started hearing it everywhere. Suddenly, the concept existed in the world in a way it never had before. Not because the concept was new, because your ability to perceive it was new. This is how language works. Not as a label for things that already exist in your mind, but as the very mechanism by which things come to exist in your mind at all. The Inuit, the indigenous people of the Arctic, have dozens of words for snow, not because they are more intelligent than the rest of us, because their survival depended on making distinctions the rest of us never needed to make. And so they developed the language, and the language developed the perception, and the perception developed the capability. The wealthy did the same thing with money. Every profession has its own language, and that language does not just describe the world the professional inhabits, it creates it. A doctor walks into a room and speaks a different language entirely. Symptoms, diagnosis, prognosis, treatment protocol, acute, chronic, benign, malignant, contraindication, etiology, pathology. They don't see a sick person, they see a medical problem to be decoded, a system of interconnected variables to be understood, addressed, and resolved. And because they speak that language, they see things invisible to everyone else in the room. The subtle asymmetry that suggests neurological involvement. The skin tone that indicates something systemic. The breathing pattern that tells a story no one else can read. Their identity is built around those words. Ask a doctor who they are, and they will tell you, "I am a doctor," not "I work in medicine." I am a doctor. The language became the identity. The identity became the capability. The capability became the contribution. A lawyer reads a contract and sees a completely different document than you do. Liability, indemnification, precedent, exposure, breach, force majeure, jurisdiction, arbitration, fiduciary duty. Where most people see paperwork, the lawyer sees a battlefield. Where most people see an agreement, the lawyer sees 17 ways it could fail and 3 ways to protect against each one. And because they speak that language, they navigate a world most people cannot even perceive. A world of risk, obligation, and consequence that exists in every transaction, every relationship, every decision, whether you can see it or not. I am a lawyer. Not, I do legal work. I am a lawyer. The language is inseparable from the identity. An engineer looks at a bridge and sees load capacity, stress points, material fatigue, compression, tension, resonance frequency, thermal expansion. Not a crossing, a system of forces in constant negotiation, a conversation between gravity, material, and design that never stops, whether anyone is watching or not. And because they speak that language, they can build what others can only imagine. They can look at something that does not yet exist and know, before a single piece of steel is placed, whether it will stand or fall. I am an engineer. The language created the identity. The identity created the capability. The capability created the world you cross every day without a second thought. Now here is the question most people never ask. What language do you speak about money? Not what do you know about money. What language do you speak? Because knowledge and language are not the same thing. You can know that investing is important without having the language to evaluate an investment. You can know that debt is dangerous without having the language to distinguish between debt that destroys and debt that builds. You can know that real estate can build wealth without having the language to analyze whether a specific property will put money in your pocket or take it out. Knowledge without language is a map without a legend. You can see the territory. You cannot navigate it. Most people speak 3 financial words: salary, bills, savings, and they live exactly within the boundaries of those 3 words. Their financial world is constructed entirely from those 3 concepts. I earn a salary. I pay my bills. I try to save what is left, and the month ends, and it begins again, and the 3 words repeat. And the world they describe never changes, because it cannot change. You cannot think thoughts for which you have no words. You cannot see opportunities for which you have no framework. You cannot make decisions for which you have no vocabulary. The 3-word financial world is not just a description of a situation. It is a prison built from language. And the walls are invisible precisely because they are made of words. Now listen to how a financially educated person speaks about the same reality. They don't see a salary. They see active income, trading time for money, with a ceiling determined by hours available and a floor determined by skill level. They don't see bills. They see liabilities, obligations that take money out of their pocket every single month, reducing the capital available for deployment. They don't see savings. They see uninvested capital, losing value to inflation at approximately 3 to 4% per year, waiting to be deployed into assets that generate returns. Same reality, completely different language, completely different perception, completely different decisions. And here is what those decisions look like over the course of a decade. The 3-word person earns, pays, and saves for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they have a modest savings account that has barely kept pace with inflation. The financially literate person earns, deploys, and compounds for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they have an asset column that generates income whether they work or not. Same income, same city, same opportunities, different language, different result. So, what is the language of money? It starts with the most fundamental distinction in all of personal finance: assets and liabilities, not as accounting terms, as a way of seeing every object, every purchase, every decision in your financial life. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. That's it. 2 words, 1 distinction, and the ability to look at anything and ask, does this put money in my pocket or take money out? Most people have never asked that question. Not because they lack the intelligence, because they lack the word. Liability is not a word most people use about their own home, their own car, their own lifestyle. But once you have the word, you cannot not ask the question, and once you ask the question, you cannot not see the answer. Then comes cash flow, not income, not revenue, not earnings. Cash flow, the movement of money, in and out, the direction and the velocity, the difference between money that arrives once requiring your presence to earn it, and money that arrives repeatedly, requiring only the asset you built or bought. Cash flow is what separates the person who works for money from the person whose money works for them. And it is a concept that simply does not exist in a 3-word financial vocabulary. Then comes return on investment. The question not of how much you earned, but of what your money earned relative to what you put in. $10,000 that generates $1,000 per year has a 10% return on investment. $10,000 sitting in a savings account generating $50 per year has a 0.5% return on investment. Same $10,000. 2 completely different financial realities, visible only through the lens of this language. Then comes leverage, the ability to use other people's money, other people's time, other people's systems, to multiply your own results. The bank uses leverage every day. It takes your deposits and lends them to others at higher rates. It earns the difference at scale. The wealthy use leverage deliberately. A mortgage on a rental property is leverage, using the bank's money to control an asset that generates cash flow greater than the cost of the loan. Most people think of leverage as risk. The financially literate understand that the absence of leverage is its own kind of risk. The risk of growing too slowly to outpace inflation, time, and opportunity cost. Then comes the most important word of all: compound. The process by which returns generate returns, by which interest earns interest, by which growth accelerates itself without any additional input from you. Einstein allegedly called it the 8th wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't pay it. And the difference between earning compound growth and paying compound interest is entirely determined by whether you have the word and understand what it means. This is the language of money, not a complete dictionary, not a finance degree. 6 words: assets, liabilities, cash flow, return on investment, leverage, compound. 6 words that, once learned, change how you see every financial decision you will make for the rest of your life. And here is the profound truth that most financial education misses. Learning these words is not just an intellectual exercise. It is an identity shift. Because once you speak this language, you are no longer someone who earns and spends and hopes. You are someone who evaluates, who analyzes, who asks the question before spending the dollar. You are no longer a consumer of money. You are a director of money. And the identity of director produces completely different behavior than the identity of consumer. Not through willpower, not through discipline, through language. because you cannot behave in a way that is inconsistent with how you see yourself. And you cannot see yourself differently without a language that describes a difference. Rich Dad understood this at the deepest level. He didn't start by teaching Kiyosaki which stocks to buy or which properties to invest in. He started by teaching him to read financial statements, to understand the language of accounting, to see the world through the lens of assets and liabilities, income and expenses, cash flow and equity. Because once you have the language, the decisions follow naturally. You don't have to be told not to buy liabilities and call them assets. You can see for yourself that they are liabilities. The language does the work. Here is the action for this week, not a financial decision, not an investment, a vocabulary exercise. Take the 6 words from today: assets, liabilities, cash flow, return on investment, leverage, compound. Write each one down. Write your own definition in your own words. Then apply each word to your current financial life. What are your assets? What are your liabilities? What is your cash flow right now? What is the return on your current savings? Where are you using leverage? Where is compounding working for you or against you? You do not need to change anything today. You just need to see it. Because what you can see, you can change. And what you cannot name, you cannot see. That moment I mentioned, the moment someone uses a financial word you have never heard before, and instead of asking, you nod and move on. That moment does not have to define you anymore. You have the language now. And with the language comes the vision. And with the vision comes the choice. And with the choice comes everything. That moment, it's right now. In the next step, we'll talk about one of the most overlooked ideas in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mind your own business. Not as an attitude, as a financial strategy. And why most people spend their entire lives building someone else's without ever starting their own. That's step 6. Don't miss it. If something shifted for you today, hit subscribe. Every week, one more idea that the wealthy already know and the schools never taught you. Stay on the blueprint. See you in the next step.